Goes. Hey, it's Mike Brennan. We're back. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Hope you had a great time. We're back.
Absolutely.
It's already November 27th. I'm having a hard time with that one. Where did the year go, right, Matt?
11 twelfths out of the way. That's pretty hard to believe.
Pretty hard to believe. Okay. So we're doing the ITC Energy Report segment, and we're having a repeat offender here. In this segment, we're going to be talking to Kwafo Adarkwa, Director of Public Affairs with ITC. And we always like to assume that folks that are watching the show may not really be familiar with the companies or our guests. So let's start that off, Kwafo, talking about what ITC is and what you guys do.
Yeah, thanks again, Mike and Matt, and then happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays coming for everybody. So ITC is the nation's largest independent electric transmission company. What that means is energy is transferred in a three-tier system. You have power plants that generate it. You have us, a transmission in the middle. You have distribution that gets to your homes and businesses. So we are that middle highway, if you will, of energy throughout the state. We own, operate, and maintain those transmission lines throughout this state and 7 other states across the Midwest. In my role as Director of Public Affairs, I'm entrusted with making a public policy environment that's conducive for us to do business in the state of Michigan and other states as well. I have a variety of different hats I wear within the organization, but really try to build trust, accountability amongst the stakeholders here in our great state.
Well, thanks for that, Kwafo. Today, we wanted to look forward a little bit to 2024 and talk about what's coming in the energy industry. The last time we talked with you was about a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
We discussed electric vehicles and their potential impact on the grid. Could you give us an update on that topic? I know there's been some talk lately about a little bit of a slowdown in the growth of EVs.
Yeah, and I think as a state, what I will step back for a second and say that we're heading in the right direction, but we have to look at the whole totality of what's happening on the energy system. You know, we went from a model in days gone by where fossil fuel generation was largely near population centers. There wasn't much of a need for that much transmission because everything was close to where it's being produced. We're moving away to a system where the power is produced far distance, and especially with renewable energy, where it's in the places where it's most plentiful. So where the wind regime is more robust, where there's more sun. And we're using transmission as that conduit in between the two vectors. And so when you have that sort of system, obviously a company like ours is paramount for getting that done. And when we think about EVs, it's just one more pressure. You have the pressure of these new forms of resources coming out of the system and the pressure of the load that's going to be for electric vehicles as we look to 2024 and beyond. And so we have a lot of work, progress is going on, but there's a lot of work ahead of us to ensure that the system is in place that gets us to where we need to be in 2024 and beyond from EVs and other uses for our electric system. And so I'd like to say the other thing to think about as well is extreme weather. Also we've had that here in Michigan, we've had that in other places across the country. It's been well documented. It's another pressure point on our system. And so we as a company have to make sure we are prepared for all those outcomes. EV is just one of many outcomes we have to look at in 2024 and beyond.
Yes, I can speak to extreme weather. I live in Ann Arbor, and we've been down, I think, at least a half a dozen times this year. It's not your fault. We won't name that other company.
I'm
ITC.
staying out of that, Mike.
Yeah, we'll stay out of that quagmire. So will the grid be ready in 2024 to handle the load?
Yeah, so Mike, good question. In the short term, the answer is yes, but. So yes, there's enough capability on the system in the 2024 timeframe for what we believe is the penetration of electric vehicles on the system. Now, as we look forward, remember what I just said about the different pressures and pressure points on the system. We have to build more capability in the system to allow, if we go to a place where you have 2 million EVs on the road, as the state is kind of earmarked as what they want by 2030, 2 million EVs on the road and 100,000 chargers. That all requires electric load. That all requires investment. That all requires the work that ITC does. And we have to get started on that now. We pretty much should get started on it yesterday. So we have to make sure we have the public policy environment that's conducive for that. We have to make sure we have the equipment in place for that. We have to make sure we work in concert with our customer utilities, our DTEs, our consumers energy of the world, and also the auto manufacturers as well. We all need to be working together in the same direction so we can make sure the customer experience is a good one as we go on this EV adoption curve. And investing in transmission is a great way to start in terms of making sure we have that backbone infrastructure to have the electric highway to match the superhighway we want for our EVs.
Well, obviously EVs are part of the equation when it comes to the grid, but talk a little bit, if you would, about how the grid supports economic development as well as the EV transition.
Yeah, great question, Matt. I mean, electric transmission in the utility that we provide is the backbone of modern society. Long distance transmission is just critical to our way of life in the modern world. You have to have a reliable electric grid to do anything we want to do. To even conduct this interview, we are on the backbone of the electric transmission and the grid that has enabled all that. So a modernized electric grid is really the fulcrum. It's the center point of where we're going to go between 2024 and however far out you want to go. You have to have that backbone infrastructure in place to ensure we have the way of life that we've grown accustomed to, and that the future demands. When you talk about renewable energy, when you talk about electric vehicles, when you talk about full-on electrification of almost everything in our homes and businesses, you have to have a backbone grid in place to make all of that work.
We've talked about the MISO long-distance transmission projects a little bit on previous episodes, and I think you addressed it when you were on last as well. Yeah. And we know before them that there's a series of multi-value projects or MVP projects. So how do projects like these contribute to the economy?
Yeah, let's take a step back. So the multi-value projects in what you described, they came out about in the last decade. Multiple values were provided, as was discussed. They're across 18 different states in the Midwest. The value has outstretched what we initially thought about back in the 2010s. And I've been in this industry for 20 years, so I've seen the evolution of all those projects. We have some here in Michigan, in the Thumb region of our state, that ITC owns and operates, and it's been a great addition to the strength and backbone system there with the multi-value. Now we fast forward to what MISO was looking at the landscape, as we've talked about in this interview, with the changing landscape, new forms of generation, old fossil plants retiring, new forms of generation coming online. So they established these long-range transmission plan projects with different tranches, as they call them. So we have some projects here in Michigan, two in particular, that'll kind of run through the center part of the state and start at the Indiana-Michigan border and run up through the middle part of the state. And they're providing a much needed next level of reliability and flexibility for the grid, and allowing for, as what we talked about, EVs, we talk about renewables, we talk about the changing landscape. These long-range transmission projects are going to be in place to strengthen the grid for the future, to allow for the different purposes and things that are going to happen on the grid. And it's really an insurance policy for that future that is for sure going to be electrified.
Well, speaking of renewables, there have been a lot of conversations lately about renewables, utility scale wind and solar. Does ITC foresee this trend of more renewable energy being built continuing in 2024 and beyond? I know there was a big story, I believe in the Free Press on Sunday, about how there's occasionally popping up opposition to some of these projects in rural areas.
Yeah, I think with the investment that's been made in the utility industry, in other industries as well, I don't see the slowing down of this, if you will. I think all signs push towards electrification and clearer forms of electricity being on the grid. If we want to look at some recent developments, in Lansing, soon to be signed, the energy package of bills that are out there really are moving us more towards 100% clean, and it's defined in different ways, but clean standard by 2040. So that's on the books. And then, the investment that goes along with that, people are making long-term, long-range investments so that you don't just stop that momentum going forward. And so with the adoption of EVs, with the changing dynamics and the landscape, with the sort of the economics that are coming down too from some of the renewables as well. I think all systems are that we're moving forward 2024 and beyond with the retirement of fossil fuels for a lot of our companies, this move to renewable energy and or other forms of energy to get us the reliable grid that, again, that we just crave. We just have to have energy moving forward.
I was reading something, I believe it's part of that energy package that the House and Senate approved and the governor signed. Getting back to your point on local folks being opposed to, putting up solar farms or wind or whatever the case may be. And we're going to have Dan Scripps on here in the next segment so I can confirm that. But I think the MPSC is going to be able to override some of those concerns, is my thinking, right, Kwafo?
Well, Mike, I wouldn't say override is a proper word. I think the commission and Chairman Scripps is someone who can speak to this very eloquently. He's done this for so many years and is a great steward of our state in that regard. I would say it provides a backstop. Everything still starts local. You go through that activity, you go through the process as that doesn't change from today. It's just when there's an issue and there is a conflict in terms of that local piece, then you'll have the commission there as a backstop to kind of adjudicate it. Everyone's voice will be heard, and we can talk about it in that forum to move this stuff forward. Because again, as I mentioned, the train has left the track, so to speak. The movement is towards different forms of generation coming online. That's just where investment is going. That's just where the landscape is for the utility sector. And so this just provides a bit of backstop in that regard. And again, I know Chairman Scripps will do a wonderful job talking about that in your next segment.
Yeah, I was reading a story from the PBS website just this morning in preparation for talking with you and Chairman Scripps today. Yeah. And there's a lot of misinformation included in some of this anti-utility scale wind and solar projects. Like offshore wind has never worked anywhere. Not true. Wind turbines kill tons of birds. Also not true. Actually, conventional power plants kill more birds. So, I mean, a lot of this, I think, is just breaking through the noise and getting people accustomed to change. And, some people don't like just the way the wind turbines look. I think they're beautiful, because each one of them is, to me, another chance for the planet here to stop burning fossil fuels so much.
Well, and again, as a company, we're agnostic in terms of how, the generation comes to us. Our job at the end of the day is to provide reliable power. But I will say, it makes for interesting. We just had Thanksgiving, interesting energy talk at the table when we talk about what's happening in the landscape, right? And some people share your opinion about the aesthetics and the beauty of the things, and we also know that some people don't like what those things and they don't like change. And all I can say and all I can offer is that change is sort of inevitable at this point. We're moving towards this. There's a lot of investment being made. That's just where the landscape is going. And our job, as a utility, as the folks that regulate as a utility as well, to be able to see that future, try to get us there, with the least stress on the system, and try to make sure things stay reliable and we keep the way of life we've grown accustomed to in the energy sector for so many years.